Welcome to Natu Reads, an audio library of revolutionary texts. Scripting the Change. Selected writings of Anuradha Ghandy. A Time to Remember. The only characteristic of the 1980 elections is the lack of choices before us. Going by their long record in power, we should not expect anything from the new government, which will be made up of the same old faces, merely masquerading under new names. A critical appraisal of each major party and individual will tell us what we can expect from them. What makes such an appraisal a little less formidable than it would otherwise have been is the fact that all the leading lights have been around in power for so long, even though they may have moved from party to party or even formed new parties. Thus, the Lokdal's or the Janata S's newness does not indicate a change in Charan Singh's policies. He continues to draw his support from the big farmers and landlords of the north, the Jats, Kurmis, Bhumihars, and other intermediate castes. His rural bias is oriented towards their interests alone, and their prosperity is dependent on the poverty of those who form the bulk of rural India, the small peasants and landless laborers, be they Harijans, Adivasis, or those belonging to any other caste or religion. Charan Singh often declares with anger that, because he is a simple farmer, the urban press and the big politicians are contemptuous of him. In a way, he is right. He has not, in all his years of power, risen above his class. Like his class, his attitudes are feudal, casteist, reactionary, and anti-woman. He, of course, calls this Gandhism. His newfound secularism does not follow from the anti-Muslim and anti-Harijan stance he has always taken. When his fellow Jats were massacring Harijans in Patnagar, in Bihar, in Punjab, and in Haryana, he remained silent. When communal riots exploded in Aligarh and Jamshedpur, he took no stand. But his anti-urbanism has been expressed very often and very clearly in his statements on organizing urban labor and in his defense of the police massacre in 1977 of innocent workers of the Swadeshi mills, Kanpur, who were only demanding that their wage arrears be paid. Charan Singh's anti-urbanism, like his rural bias, is partial. Just as his sympathies lie only with the rich farmers, his hatred is directed only towards the organized working class, who, according to him, are sucking away at the meager resources which could be used for rural labor by demanding wage increases. Many ex-socialists share this view. It would be nice if the facts conformed to their opinion, because then we could boast that even without socialism or communism, the working class has become a privileged section in our society. Unfortunately for them, and for the working class, various surveys have shown that the real wages of the mass of urban workers have decreased progressively over the years, compared to the prices of essentials and to company profits. Charan Singh, in his budget last year, helped increase prices further, so that today, cooking gas, which only upper-middle-class families can possess, is cheaper and more easily available than kerosene, which the rest of the people use. However, if he was really bothered about the agricultural workers' share of the national resources, the obvious thing for him to have done would have been to tax the fabulous wealth of the landlords, to reduce defense and bureaucratic expenditure, and to recover the gross tax arrears which every big industrial house owes the government. As for Charan Singh's concern for civil rights, it was during his home ministership that many states promulgated the anti-MISA, and the Janata Party tried, unsuccessfully, to make preventative detention, PD, a part of the normal laws. Those politicians that opposed Charan Singh's latest PD ordinance have no more democratic a record. When they were all united under the Janata Party, Not one of them opposed, at least publicly, the attempt by Morarji Desai to make PD a part of our criminal procedure code. They are equally guilty of all the authoritarian acts which the Janata Party committed in its 2 years' rule. The Janata Party's economic policy's main thrust was in favor of the private sector and the multinationals, all its talk of Gandhian socialism notwithstanding. Capital-intensive industries were offered incentives, even under the much publicized policy for the small and tiny sectors. Units using heavy machinery rather than labor were given concessions. Foreign aid was also increased by the Janata Party. Dominated as it was then and comprised as it is now by the right-wing parties like the Jansang and the Congress O, these policies were not surprising, nor was the lack of concern for civil rights, except when they themselves were affected, as under the emergency. The Janata Party is making a lot of capital out of Jagjivan Ram being a Harijan. Harijan feelings are being whipped up, and he is being portrayed as a leader of the oppressed scheduled castes. But Jagjivan Ram was first brought into the Congress hierarchy to prevent Ambedkar from becoming the Dalit minister needed in the 1946 cabinet. He therefore started his political career by opposing the recognized leader of the Dalits, Dr. Ambedkar. He has never, in all his long years in power, done a single thing to help the Dalits become self-sufficient. In fact, it is in his state, Bihar, that every landlord has his own army which is used to murder those Dalits that are peacefully demanding their due. Jagjivan Ram has also favored the dismissal of the striking Bombay University employees in 1978. And one must not forget that he was a major accomplice in the implementation of the emergency, during which he was part of the senior-most bodies, the Congress Parliamentary Board and the Congress Working Committee. The emergency is now being nostalgically remembered by a disturbingly large number of people. But even if some trains ran on time then, and some government officials did not take bribes, it was out of fear, not self-discipline. Knowledge of this mass fear enabled Indira Gandhi to do what she wanted, with the economy and with our rights. Can we forget that the emergency made it possible for her to freeze our wages under the CDS, to make the giving of bonus, a deferred wage, optional, and then to ban all forms of protest against these measures? This directly benefited the large industrialists, who also gained the license to intensify arbitrary measures against the workers. The emergency made it possible for the World Bank to push its inhuman policy of population control in India, even at the cost of Indian lives. And if the emergency put an end, if at all, to corruption, it was only among those so low in the administrative ladder that for them corruption meant earning an extra 50 to 100 rupees a month. The Shah Commission reports have exposed that corruption continued to flourish at the highest levels. And it was also this high society which benefited from the emergency, as is evident from the enthusiastic support it received from the Tatas and the Birlas. The emergency, however, was only the culmination of a long process of increasing state repression on democratic protests. The policies followed by the Congress under Indira Gandhi had resulted in increasing unemployment, increasing impoverishment of small farmers and landless laborers, and increasing control of our market by the multinationals and foreign powers. In such a situation, protest was inevitable, and when the young, committed, educated men and women, who later came to be known as Naxalites, entered spontaneous agitations and started leading them, Indira Gandhi was quick to suppress them. The massacre of hundreds of young dissenters and the torture and imprisonment of thousands was done under direct orders of Mrs. Gandhi's government. For them, however, the emergency had always existed, and the opposition leaders then had not said a word in protest. A legacy of the emergency is Sanjay Gandhi, who can, even when his family is out of power, terrorize ordinary people and judges with his gang of hoodlums, and openly spit at the law and get away with it. These tactics are very reminiscent of those used by Hitler's blackshirts. So were the slogans of stability and socialism. The CPM is one party which does not underestimate the fiendish capabilities of Indira and Sanjay Gandhi. But its own record has been very disappointing, especially because, as a left party, it had raised many expectations. Not only has it welcomed the multinationals on the economic front, but it has also not undone the deeds of the Indira era, even when it had the ability to do so. Kamal Nath, the staunch Sanjay supporter, has prospered in the past 2 years in Bengal. Senior police officers, responsible for the brutal tortures and murders, have not been touched. The CPM has also violated the democratic rights of the people over and over again, the most notorious episodes being when the Marichchapi refugees from Dandakaranya, who had cleared the forest and built homes, were forced with police help to leave their homes after food supplies to them were cut off by the CPM-led government, and the firing on the dock workers in which 6 people were killed. Can we forget these shameless deeds of all the major parties? Can we expect them to change when they draw their financial support from the landlords who, today in Punjab, Haryana, Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, and elsewhere, are massacring peasants? From the multinationals and foreign powers, whose only aim is to exploit the Indian market and suck out its resources? From private industrialists, under whose behest the police recently shot down innocent children in Faridabad? And from the communalists, who exchanged the lives of ordinary people for political deals?